Hi everyone, Anthony Forzaglia here, and welcome back to Brothers and Boss Battles Video Game Showdown, a podcast where my brothers, Pete and Tom, and I critique video games, new and old, and then have a little showdown, or brodown, if you will. This is how it works. Every 2 months, we'll have a category or genre of games. And for the first 3 episodes of that 2 month span, we will take one game per 2 week period that fits in that category and discuss it. We'll look at the game, its impact on the gaming world, its music, controls, story, talk about what we liked and disliked, and so on. On the 4th episode, the 3 previously discussed games in that category will enter our brodown, and the 3 of us will see which game of the 3 should come out as best, with the runners-up also being discussed. Over this next 2 month span, we'll be discussing and ranking 3 adventure puzzlers, games where the path is uncertain and figuring out puzzles determines the way forward. And without further ado, the first adventure puzzler we will be discussing is Stray, developed by Blue 12 Studios and published by Annapurna Interactive on PS4, PS5, and Windows on July 19th, 2022, and then coming to Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S on August 10th, 2023. Lost, alone, and separated from family, a stray cat must untangle a long forgotten city. Guys, let's do some initial thoughts. Pete, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So I guess we'll go around and say what we played it on. I played it on Xbox, basically like the day it came out for Xbox, which was about a year after the initial release on PlayStation. So I was, excited to play it. Was very anticipated playing it. I like cats a lot. I have a cat. I have an orange cat. So I was disappointed initially when I found out it was only on PlayStation, which I didn't know at the time. So anyway, having said all that, there was a lot of excitement and anticipation towards the game, and uh, I like the game. I think it was a solid game. That's how I would describe it, as solid. Um, but I do have, I think, quite a fair bit of criticisms. And I'll leave it at that for now. We'll get into the specific criticisms as we get into the meat of the show.
All right, Tom, what about you?
Yeah, so I played this on PS5. I didn't actually play it when it first came out, even though I was looking forward to it. So I ordered it was like a limited run collector's edition physical edition because I like to collect physical stuff for games that I anticipate enjoying, and this was one that I did anticipate enjoying a lot. It was pretty hyped up, even, and it was unique from the games that a lot of current games. So I was excited for it, but so I didn't actually get around to playing it until around, I'd say around 6 months after it actually launched. But yeah, so I played it then, and then I replayed it again for this podcast. And I really liked it the first time I played it, and then I liked it even more the second time I played it. So uh, yeah, lot of good things to say about this game, and I can't wait to get into it.
All right, yeah, I mean, I'll have to second that. I really liked it too. I did play it a couple of times. I played it on PlayStation 5 when PlayStation was unveiling their new PS Plus tiers, and a higher tier would give you free access to Stray. So that's what I signed up for and played it pretty early on. Uh, and I really liked it. It's not perfect, but it's really really good, especially considering the seemingly uh limited budget that they had to work on this. So I really liked it. Let's get into it a little bit more. Tom, you mentioned you really liked it, and then can you expand on that a little bit? What really drew you into this?
Yeah, so there's a lot there. I mean, so I want to start off just by talking about kind of the environment that they created here. It was just so like, I don't know, maybe I'm just like, really into this kind of aesthetic, but it just, from a visual perspective, it was, I don't know, it was just great. Like the graphics were nicely done here. The vibe that they created with like this kind of, dystopian, I guess. What do they actually refer to? Like steampunk or
Cyberpunk.
cyberpunk? Yeah,
But
yeah. That was the word I was looking for. But yeah, yeah, and I feel like they really nailed it there. And then also, like, just to touch on it, just that's the aesthetic part of it, but then also the background that of the world that they created here. It was like really deep for a game that is seemingly like simple and you know, we'll get into this later, but it's like also a pretty short game, only around 5 hours, I would say, to complete the story on average. So like just the amount of world building that they were able to cram into this game was just, I don't know, I thought it was really well done by the developers.
Yeah, it really hits on, it's sort of this futuristic setting, but it hits on a lot of real world themes too. And I really like that cyberpunk setting as well. Um, you know, it, things were falling apart, but the inhabitants there were trying to keep everything together. Uh, and I say the word inhabitants because I'll briefly touch on a little bit of the story elements. We'll get more into it at the end, but and we'll do our spoiler warning here. So we will be discussing the story and other elements of the game. So if it's something you really want to hear or really want to experience before hearing us talk about it, just maybe tune out and then play Stray and then come back and listen to the episode. But yeah, so there's no humans in this world, the one that you're playing in. It's all robots and of course the cat Stray, commonly called Stray. The gameplay itself, you play from the perspective of this orange tabby, this cat. You're just kind of at the beginning of the game just playing with other cats, and it's seemingly cute and all of that, and then you're kind of just doing what cats do and traversing on planks and boards and all of that, and you eventually slip, one of the boards break, I think, if I remember correctly, and you kind of just you fall into this, what happens to be a walled off city. You learn why the city is walled off, and that's part of the story and part of the world building that goes into it. And at first you're just trying to escape, but it or trying to get out of there, but it takes on a much bigger meaning, a much bigger purpose, and the cat winds up meeting fellow robots that help him and have causes that are important to them, that uh, the cat helps them realize, and it goes from there. So I really, people saw this, oh, it's a cat, it's cute, it's just going to be like walking around and stuff, but it really takes on this really great story, and hits on really big themes.
Yeah, we can get into some of those themes. I mean, the world that they're creating here, it's like, it really mimics a human society, which was cool. Um, obviously it has this kind of mysterious and eerie feeling around it just because of the circumstances involving the setting, which, we'll get into a little bit later. But, like you mentioned that there are only robot inhabitants here, but they really kind of took on this human element, and really evolved to the point where they're kind of the continuation of human existence. They've done things like, created societies and where they have jobs and a police system, once you get to the Midtown area. And speaking of Midtown, it's like they have their own class systems where there's a slums area and a Midtown and, so on.
Yeah, no, I mean that's really part of what I think is the draw to the game. It's like, yes, you're playing as a cat, and yes, there's a lot of robots, but it's it's got this really rich story and setting, and part of the story, I'll go into it a little bit more, and it's just you wind up helping this essence get into a robot body, a small robot body, whereas most of the robots in this society are bipedal, human-looking ones. They this particular one is a little floaty, maybe no bigger than a baseball,
It's like a
robot.
drone.
Yeah, like a little drone. Almost looks like I don't know. There was like a
Yeah,
80s movie or 90s movie. The battery was it batteries not included, where they like these little, like, they almost look like hamburgers like floating around.
I
I don't.
don't remember, but it
Yeah,
basically
Not
looks like
sure.
a mini drone.
yeah. But anyway, so that mini drone robot is called B12, and he basically becomes your companion for the rest of the campaign, and that's pretty early on. That's Stray the cat's really first duty is to get this essence into the B12, and then they go on their journey from there. And the journey seems to be at first is getting Stray the cat out of there. Like he obviously fell in, doesn't belong there. Let's get him out. But it gets a little bit more intense. You meet this group. You meet a member of this group that was formerly called the Outsiders, who are looking for a way outside of the walled off city. They want to go out. They want to be freed to go out. And that's part of it, and you learn more along the way in doing that. The other thing is you're learning about a little bit what happened. Like, why is the city walled off? Why are there no humans? And there's a lot of pretty heavy hints, if not outright discussed, that there was humans and these robots living alongside each other. These robots were helpers to humans, and the humans created them to assist them in their tasks. Eventually, there was this catastrophic event that we don't know about that caused the humans to say, okay, we need to wall off cities so that we're protected from whatever is on the outside that is problematic.
Yeah, there was one memory in, sorry, it's just for more context. Uh, there's a collectible aspect to this game where you encounter specific either locations or items that um,
Trigger memories and B12.
help B12 remember some of its past.
Right. So
There's one specific memory that I was referencing that B12 actually references some sort of plague that was, the cause for all of this discord and walling off cities and whatnot.
Right. So you have these walled off cities. I believe the setting of the game is walled off city 99, implying that there are probably several more. And eventually, even being walled off, the humans all perished anyway. So the robots kind of took up the mantle and continued society, jobs and all, and class systems and all.
Yeah, there was another memory that I wanted to mention. This one is it's a cool. This one's cool actually because there's a barterer. Is that the right way to say it? Someone one who barters
Okay.
in the slums, and you can trade that robot for an item that ends up being a memory. So that one's kind of hidden actually, which is cool. But anyway, it's a picture of one of the companion robots in its like initial early form, where it was, it had no personality or anything like that. And then B12 mentions that they eventually began to mimic the humans, and in that sense, kind of kept the human race from going extinct, even though they actually did in reality.
Pete, you've been quiet. Anything to add?
Generally, I'd say I'm less interested in the story aspect of games than you two are. I mean, if I want a story, I'll read a book. That's kind of my position.
Oh, brother.
But with that being said, I mean, I did like, the general story, the backstory, kind of the things we're talking about here. Now, Tom, you mentioned these memories, kind of these optional memories as you progress through the game. And I maybe got, I don't know, 50 or 60% of them. So I certainly didn't get all of them or close to all of them. But one of the issues I had with this game is I feel like I didn't grasp the story that well just playing through the game. And that's a problem I have generally with games. Like I kind of take points off if I feel that way. And only after I played the game, after I played, then I did my own research, online and stuff. And then I really kind of grasped the story and the backstory. And then I was like, oh, wow, that's actually pretty cool. And, I certainly understood some aspects of it for playing the game, obviously, but I didn't get the whole thing. I don't know if you guys felt that way too.
I don't know. I mean, I think I felt I was able to understand everything that we were intended to understand. I mean, obviously, there's some things that are sort of mysterious all the way through to the end, and even if you 100% the game, I like to take my time with these games, so I think I found a number of the memories on my initial playthrough. Not all of them, of course, but so I don't know. I don't know that I agree.
The memories definitely provide a lot of context into what's going on, and well, more of what went on since it's a memory.
Right.
Do you
But I
guys
mean,
do you guys have an
just to like,
estimate?
just so the listeners know, there are a number of unmissables memory story
Right.
elements too. So there's like the
Yeah.
collectible ones, and then there's the ones that drive the story forward. So it sounds like you think that even those weren't good enough to kind of lay out the
Yeah,
whole story.
those alone weren't good enough to explain the whole thing. Yes. I don't know. Do you guys have an estimate as to how many you collected? Because you guys seem to be saying that you feel like you had a pretty good grasp just by playing through.
Yeah, well, I mean, just sort of as an aside and sort of answering your question, I can't say for sure how many I did on my first try because I did play this a number of times. I did a speed run. I did I 100% did it. I got the platinum trophy on this. So like in my time playing this
Congratulations.
in
Whoa,
my
big
time
gamer.
in my time playing this game, I've seen all of the memories. So to piece together what I saw at the beginning, first playthrough versus second versus third, I don't really remember. So, but like I said, I felt I understood the story pretty well under my initial pass, and it
Yeah,
was improved upon when like researching and playing again, though.
for sure. Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I very recently actually replayed the game in preparation for this episode. Um, I think I had around 70% of the memories in my initial playthrough last year. But so for this one, I went through and got all of them. But yeah, I've, I mean, I felt definitely at a high level. I understood what was going on the first time, even without the memories. But then the memories provided some very nice, you know, contextual information.
Yes, I have like some story theories, but I'll save those to the end. I feel that's a good like sort of ending segment. Do you want to talk about some of the gameplay elements?
Yeah,
I mean, we have this in the puzzler category. I mean, and this isn't a puzzler in the sense that it's like other games where there's nothing but puzzles. But I do feel it fits pretty strongly in this category. We have seen it be advertised in the category of puzzler, along with other things like platformers as well. But I think it's pretty worthy of this category, and we'll discuss maybe our favorite and least favorite puzzles later on. But just as far as general gameplay, either of you want to start?
Well, I mean, why don't we get into the puzzles? There certainly are plenty of puzzles. Um, I mentioned at the start of the episode that I had some criticisms. This is probably my biggest criticism of the game, is that I feel like the game and specifically some of the puzzles were linear, but just like too linear to a fault. And like I'm not the gamer who's really into these big open worlds where you explore. So I have certainly nothing against and even like linear games. But like, so let me give you an example. You guys remember the puzzle where you have to, or the part of the game, I think in Midtown when you have to get the worker's cap so you could disguise the robot as a worker.
yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that part you remember. So at that point I didn't know that I had to do that or was gonna have to do that, disguise the robot. So I was just walking past I don't know if it's a clothing store or a hat store, but I saw robots kind of just robotically, so to speak, going in and out with like loading boxes into the store and then back. I think maybe they had a truck going back and forth. It was like it seemed like just out of place. Like it seemed like obviously I have to do something there. So I jumped into one of the cardboard boxes, and throughout the game, as the cat, you're able to go into cardboard boxes. So that was kind of apparent. So I snuck into this store, really with no objective, no reason to want to do that or anything like that. And then once you're in the store, there's literally only one item that you could steal, that you could take, which is the worker's hat. So that's the thing I took. And again, absolutely no reason for me to do that. And then very shortly after, I discover, oh, I need that. So like, that kind of ruined the puzzle for me. That aspect where I just wasn't thinking critically. I just kind of saw things and did things because that's what the game allowed me. And then later on, I learned, oh, I need this thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of like the. I,
you like that? It was like,
I like how you could come across like that Midtown level and the slums are two that come to mind where
If he wants a puzzle, he'll do a jigsaw.
yeah, but those are just like two parts where you're free to explore and find things. And
no,
like
that's fine.
I like that it's not scripted. It's not like it does not like like they could have easily just locked you out of that area until you met the robot who
Needs to
you had
be
yeah,
disguised.
yeah,
Yeah,
you need to be
that
disguised.
would
Well,
have been
Like
that's
that would have been a little
like
silly too, because like maybe the
well,
workers to
but
load the store only show up when you need that, or when you
yeah,
know you need that.
but those are
but
kind of the two options in games. It's either like you can get it anytime and then you have it when you need it,
No,
or you're locked out of it until like you trigger something. So
no, but it's not.
I
Go
yeah.
ahead, go ahead.
No,
Finish your
go
thought.
ahead. No, you go
No,
make your point because my
it's not getting it any time. Like, because I actively snuck in, I actively stole this thing. It's not like I found this on the street and was like, oh, what am I going to need this for? Or, if I did something, I helped a non-playable character out and he gave me this as a reward. That's different. Then you're like, what do I need this for? Then later on you discover, oh, this is where I need this. I actively did these things, so it's a puzzle ruined.
sometimes they're in a. But I think the developers are between a rock and a hard place with that, per the example I just said. But I find it interesting that you came across the puzzle with the going into the store and getting the hat before running into the guy because I actually ran into that robot and got the explanation from him. For those that don't know, he's seemingly going to help you sneak into this corporation that you need to get into. I think to steal a battery.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So so there's that, and I kind of played as I guess it was intended, where you find this guy, he tells you what he needs to disguise himself, and then you figure out puzzles to get it. One of them being this, you know, get in, get into the box to sneak into the store because otherwise they just kick you out of the store if you just try to like walk in.
Yeah, this puzzle was actually even deeper because so one of the workers. So like when you first get to Midtown, there's one guy standing by the store who's one of the workers, one robot, and he says, "Oh, he's not working until his coworker shows up." And so there's no moving of cardboard boxes at that point, and you can't go into the store, and the owner of the store shoos you away. Um, so you actually have to get that second worker from the bar. He's like sleeping.
Oh, right.
I guess he like got drunk or whatever.
Yeah.
If
You have to
robots
like
can
drop.
get drunk,
You have to
you have to
like
drop a
yeah.
like a box on him.
Yeah, you have to like
Um,
traverse up a certain way so that you can knock the box off.
not yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
he wakes up and goes to his post at the job.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I think we'll get more into specific puzzles, but as far as gameplay, there, like we said, there are some like platformer elements of it, not in the traditional sense, but you do have to, jump on certain areas and, um, I think even that forms sort of the basis of a quote unquote puzzle because in certain areas there's like the swinging post you can jump on, and depending on the direction where you jump from, it'll swing to the direction that you needed to go in. So it's it's platforming, but you have to choose the right angle to do it at.
Yeah, and just as a clarifying point, not necessarily a criticism, but when you say jump from one platform to another, you're really just pressing A. It's not like a free jumping where you might, miss your jump and fall.
Yeah,
it's
but you
not a
still have to
skill-based
like
jump.
yeah, but you still have to like look at where you're going.
You have to look at where you're going. Yes, that's true. You can't play with your eyes closed.
If I want to see, I'll wear glasses. Anyway,
But yeah, so getting back to like just the other gameplay elements, yeah, I mean it was cool how if you tuned into our Conquer's Bad Fur Day episode, you know I'm a big fan of varied gameplay elements. And this game was another one that had a lot of those. Yeah, I mean, the stuff that we mentioned, like the puzzle solving and looking at where you're going to jump. But then, it also had like these chase sequences where you're running away from the baddies in the game called
Zurks.
Zurks.
might as well give a little bit of
Yeah,
information about that. We so there's an interesting point in this game. There's really no main antagonist, at least as far as like a boss or anything like that. But there are these creatures called Zurks, and they are the robot citizens of this place are terrified of them, and they in fact think you are one of them, and that's sort of how you got introduced to the concept of them. They're essentially these like little creatures that were created by the humans when humans were still around to help with all get rid of all the waste in this walled off city or these walled off cities, 'cause presuming they're in other places too. But they wound up evolving so much and getting so strong that they were started to eat everything, including the robots. And now the robots are particularly fearful of them, and they seem to be the main impediment of them even trying to escape to the outside world or move around freely. Yeah, so they're sort of an antagonist in the sense that they go after you.
yeah. Now, on the topic of antagonists, um, the Zergs definitely are a impeding factor in the earlier parts. But once you get over to the Midtown area, these basically they're cops.
Like the sentry robots.
Yeah, I mean they're pretty much trying to stop anyone from leaving
Yeah.
Midtown and getting to the outside.
And it's
Uh,
interesting that like you start off in the slums and everything's kind of just like everyone's just kind of existing there. I mean, it's obviously not well maintained or anything, but it's sort of you know just is what it is. But the once you get to Midtown, it's interesting. It's like the forces are out and they're just sort of there's more to do there. Like there's bars and there's uh clubs and other things to do, but there's more order there, and maybe that's what maybe they're trying to say something. Maybe the game's trying to say something there that that they're not worrying about these inhabitants of the slums area, but they sort of are of this mid-level area.
yeah, that goes back into just some of the other stuff we referenced earlier about class systems and just really like, robot evolution to be like humans. They took all these,
Cues.
ideas from human culture, whether it was a good or a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, so you back to the gameplay. There are scenes where you are getting chased by these Zerks and you have to run away, and it's interesting in the sense that even those are sort of like puzzles because which path you take, what rails you climb on or things you climb on to escape from them
Yeah. Some
becomes
of them were
important.
even were like you had to get B12 to hack like gates.
Right.
And there was some puzzle element there where you would, need to kind of trap the Zerks in a particular way so that you can escape more easily.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick break and then we'll come right back. All right, welcome back.
Yeah, so I wanted to jump in and we mentioned the Zerks, and before we move on, just a little tidbit that I was reading about the game, that the Zerks were actually inspired by bed bugs. I guess one of the team members was having a bout with bed bugs during the time of the development. Um, I don't know. I didn't really get that. To me, they were just like mice or rats. But actually,
They instilled the fear of bed bugs, though.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. But actually, as I'm reading about the game a little bit, I do see them referred to the Zerks as like bug-like creatures. I don't know.
I think they
Anyway,
have like multiple arms and legs,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, so That's like sort of part of the
Yeah, they kind of look
anatomy
like
of the insect.
fat spiders or something.
Yeah,
Even though
like
spiders aren't technically insects,
well,
right?
like ticks or something.
True.
They almost look
Yeah,
like a
exactly, but just bigger.
yeah, like
Yeah.
a mouse, a rat-sized tick, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, you guys also mentioned, or I forget who, kind of the chase sequences, so to
yeah,
speak. I thought those were really well done. I mean, I definitely felt like my anxiety raise during those sequences, and they kind of happened throughout the game.
yeah. No, they did a good job with that because like the music changed and like you're able to run a little bit faster with the cat, so it's just raises the stakes, I feel. Definitely. But
Yeah,
there's
that
no
was actually the
yeah.
Zurks. That was actually one of the two instances that you could die, basically, is those Zerk chase sequences and then getting like shot by the sentry bot.
Right, right. But otherwise there's no real fighting in this game as far as talking about gameplay elements here. It's
Yeah,
most
that's basically true, but actually, I'm sure. I was like, do you remember?
He's like,
But
well, actually,
do you remember? Obviously, you remember the part when you get that device from Doc. That's kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
the light, the UV light, I guess.
Right.
And then when you expose that to the Zerks, or expose the Zerks to the light for a couple of seconds, they'll explode, they'll blow
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool. Actually, yeah, you're right.
That's
Yeah.
kind of like fighting.
Yeah.
Um, and that part was really cool. I actually found that very satisfying, and I also like that you kind of did that for a short while, and then the device dies. So it's not like you just had that for like half the game, and they kind of kill it, like kill the joke.
Yeah, no, that's true. It was a fun element and they did it well.
yeah. I think in general they did well at spacing the gameplay elements in a way that it didn't get repetitive or boring.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could talk a little bit more about the gameplay and certainly the puzzles, and particular parts of the game, but I think we're far enough along in the episode where I'll give a review of the actual story. Just I think it'll help us explain everything more and just more easily talk about it rather than just try to dance around concepts and things like that. So, as we mentioned, you fall into this walled off city as the orange tabby cat, and you meet B12, this other drone like robot. You first traverse the slums area where you're told of this individual Momo, who was the leader of this group, the Outsiders, who were trying to get outside. So they pretty much say that Momo has given up, and you're given this information because your goal at that point is to try to get outside as the cat, and seemingly B12 is along with going along with that as well. Uh, so you meet Momo. He's really down on his luck. The Outsiders group has pretty much all been lost, other than him. So he's very just depressed and has no ambition to really go any further. Stray and B12 through things they have found sort of give him second more hope. And he's kind of sets out on a quest with the two of you to try to find the other outsiders. And there's some pretty cool things with that. He's trying to look him up on a computer while you're doing other stuff with as the cat with B12. So he really becomes like a third member of the group for a little bit. And eventually you track down the other members, the first of which being Doc. You get him back into the into the Waldorf city, from wherever he was, and he's able to get you that device. You then meet another individual, Clementine. Um, well, first is Balthazar, right? And then you meet Clementine. And this whole time, B12 is learning memories. And before you sort of get to the latter stages of the game, he comes to the realization that he is actually a human. He was a human scientist who input his consciousness into the network of the system, and then and was trying to get out for years. And that's another debate on the internet about how long that actually was. He eventually gets out with the help to Stray into this drone-like body, And his purpose at that point of the game is to try to carry on humanity, since he is in fact a human. You eventually get to the Midtown area where, again, there's these sentry bots and a lot more security, and more heavy-handed, sort of more authority. You wound up getting captured there. That leads to a whole nother sequence in a jail where you escape. You free B12, who has been imprisoned in this sort of force field like cylindrical cell, and eventually you get to the control center of this walled off city, which is where you can open the walled off city's main security and be open to the outside. Again, spoiler alert, that does eventually happen. Um, in the process, B12's body dies, and you feel he's no more. The sunlight overtakes the walled off city, kills the Zurks, and you escape as Stray the cat. So that's pretty thorough rundown, I feel, of the story. Now let's get anything else to add, or do you want to get back more into the gameplay, puzzles, levels?
I'll add a few things, just more on the development notes. So because we're talking a lot about the story and the world, and I actually found it interesting that a lot of what we're talking about really wasn't even part of the initial concept. Um, so the director, I think it was co-directed, if I'm not mistaken, and they're artists, and they were inspired by um an actual walled city in China. Uh, Kowloon, I think it's pronounced Kowloon. So I was reading a little bit about that city. And it was built centuries ago as a military fort. And then after World War II, there was it gained like this influx in population, and it turned into a very like highly a high population density city. And really, they had no governing body. So it was actually kind of interesting how, and you were talking earlier about how there was more like governing and policing in Midtown, but none really in the slums and the rooftops. So maybe that just kind of mimicked what
Hmm.
This Chinese city.
Right.
So anyway, eventually this city doesn't exist anymore. It was demolished
Hmm.
in the 90s, and it's actually kind of cool if you could look at a few pictures of it online, and it does definitely remind me of the slums and the rooftops from the game.
Yeah, I got to check that out.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, something I read not too long ago. So anyway, so that was like the initial concept, and then they realized that because it was kind of so vertical, like a vertical world, so to speak, and I guess it had a lot of little paths between balconies and roofs and such that it would be a good environment for a cat to explore.
Mm.
So like it wasn't like the initial concept, like, oh, we're gonna make this game that you play in the perspective of a cat.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I found that interesting. And then
That's
just
interesting.
one
Yeah,
other
I
thing
feel
on
like.
the,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was gonna say I feel like the game would have been a lot less successful if there wasn't a cat as the main character.
Yeah, just like a
Well, the
guy
game would have been a
having
lot different.
having to
So,
climb everywhere.
yeah.
It would have
Yes.
had as much appeal, I feel. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, there's just one other thing. Initially the non-playable characters were going to be human, but
Mm.
just development team, and then I think you touched on this too, is kind of a small team, or maybe you didn't, I don't know. But it was a small team with a relatively small budget. And, so there was a lot of extra difficulty and really unnecessariness, if that's a word, to design the human
It's not.
models. Yeah. Okay. What I meant to say is if I could make up a word. Um, but to design these human models just for all these non-playable characters. So
Mm.
then they started toying with the idea of what if they were robots, and that's kind of how the story was developed after that. So just found all
Yeah,
that stuff kind of interesting as it relates to the development of the story.
that is cool, but I almost was distracted by the fact that the word "ness" is already in unnecessary. I think that's probably why unnecessariness is not a word, but Anyway,
All
that
right.
but that is pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, so why don't we talk about some of our favorite levels, least favorite levels? I think that'll, help build on the discussion of the story that I laid out at the beginning of this segment. Tom, you want to start?
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
start. So, yeah, I really liked, I kind of touched on this earlier, but so I liked the gameplay loop that was featured in the slums area a lot. Just being able to explore and come across, different items or NPCs or environments, and you just kind of, you get a lay of the land. You run through it and you see what's there, and then, there are items that you can pick up or people that you can talk to who have specific roles within the community. And, then as you progress through the game, you remember these people. And, there are certain puzzles that require you to know, you know, to call upon these specific characters for different things. So a couple of puzzles come to mind. So I want to. There's one that's actually an optional one. So you end up getting this note that's written in like binary computer code. So nobody really knows what it says, and it's actually ends up being a combination to a safe.
Hmm.
Actually, it ends up being a location um, that has a combination to a safe. So you have this note and you don't know what to do, and then eventually you meet this guy who's like the computer programmer, the robot called Elliot. So you can show him the note, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, this I believe it was the bar." But so like he basically tells you, "Oh yeah, it's saying to go to the bar or whatever." And then you go there and you can see the combination, like written on the wall, I think it was. And then you take that combination, you go back to the safe that's by the street musician robot. And then you could get, an item through that. So it's like cool how like some of these puzzles had a bunch of different like steps to it. And another one just involving the same character actually. So the same NPC, I mean, you need to at one point call upon him to perform some tasks for you. But he's complaining that he's too cold and so he can't like use his keyboard or type because he's like shivering too much or whatever the robot equivalent to that is. So then through your traversal of the slums, you'll come across this character who's like the grandma, I think they refer to her as. So it's
Yeah.
like supposed to be like an older woman, I guess. But so her role in the community is to make clothes. So, you can basically get a poncho from her that you give to the programmer, and then he's able to help you out. So there's just a lot of stuff like that in the slums that I thought was cool.
Yeah, I'd have to second that, to be honest. I think my favorite area was the slums and the rooftop areas in the sort of lower level of the walled off city. It I just like the environment. The game took its time during that portion of it where you were really allowed to explore and had that atmospheric sort of background music and lighting, and it really drew upon that sense of mystery and like, what's going on here. Meeting interesting robots. A lot of them were, interesting down there. I really liked that area as well. I thought it was really well done, and just had the most fun. I mean, it does bring up the pacing of the game, like that. A large chunk of it is at that. I feel at those early portions of the game, and then it really ramps up towards the end. But so I think I just like that slower pace and learning things and trying to figure out what was going on. More so than any specific gameplay element. Pete, what about
Yeah,
you?
yeah. So, I mean, not to sound like a video game scholar, but I think the pacing makes sense. That at the beginning you're kind of exploring and learning about the character and the world, and then it kind of you know
I have a question
reaches
though. If you do want to sound like a scholar, would you also read a book then?
a book about video games. Yeah, probably more than one.
Ah,
So, for my favorite parts and least favorite parts, I guess. So, I'm kind of the opposite of you guys. I didn't love the slums and the rooftops, which I guess is kind of the first two, or maybe the second and third chapters. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's like one.
Well, the
It's
first is
the
sort of like when you're on the outside as the cat
yeah,
still. So
yeah,
yeah,
but it's the beginning of the game
yeah,
nonetheless.
yeah.
And I don't know, it's a little confusing to me. And like there were times when I was like, especially on the rooftops now, like I knew there was a location, like I want to be there, but just to figure out how to get there was not always easy. And that was just like
Part of the puzzling.
Yeah,
frustrating in an annoying way. Like, and I'm generally not into, like I mentioned before, like the big exploring. Not to say that this was such a big world, but just the free form exploring and talking to people. That's kind of too slow for me in games a lot of times. I wasn't really a big fan of that. I also didn't mention, but like I'm also not a big fan of like the cyberpunk environment. It's kind of like I think it's supposed to make you feel like it's close enough to reality now, like the present, that it could actually happen in the future, but but different enough to make it feel different and futuristic. And I didn't really sense that from playing the game. I just felt like it was very unrealistic. So anyway, having said that, my favorite part of the game was probably the jail chapter. To me, that did feel realistic, but it was still like a little eerie and creepy, and you felt some anxiety trying to escape, but in a realistic way. And that's where there was like a lot of the stealth sequences, I guess, trying to maneuver around the sentry bots and things like that. So that was probably my favorite chapter. I'm sure you guys remember that.
Yeah, that was definitely a good part. I definitely enjoyed that. Um, it's funny. It brings up sort of. It's funny you say it was a realistic part though, because it brings up a sort of an iconic, non-realistic part for me, which is you as the cat fetching a key to unlock Clementine, one of the members of the Outsiders, who is helping you at that point. Her cell that she's been trapped in. So I wish cats could do it. Maybe I'll chalk it up to the thousands of years in the future this game is supposed to take place, and cats have evolved to the point where they can fetch keys and talk to robots. But I don't know. Be nice.
yeah, I think that's it. They've evolved the cats.
Nice. So that is another thing though. So there's a lot of dialogue in this game, but none of it is like voice acted. There's little sounds and stuff, and the robots kind of talk in this, what could almost be described as sort of this binary, like electronic kind of vocal. But B12 is seemingly able to converse with the cat. So that's another sort of interesting element, and I guess it was sort of necessary for the game, but I
Yeah,
wonder, did he crack cat language, or is it just sort of like a necessity of it being a video game?
I think it's probably the latter, but I mean, it seems as if basically the cat understands English
Yeah,
or whatever the player's native language is.
right, right.
We all, you know, we played the English version, so
It's in
you know,
English. The
so it's in English,
yeah.
but yeah,
So another interesting gameplay or kind of story portion is you do eventually get into like the sewers area, and there's a lot of these really highly evolved Zurks there, where they're attached to the walls and they're growing eyeballs and they can't be damaged even if you have Doc's little ray machine. Um, so I wonder if that sort of portends a future antagonist in a potential sequel. Not that there's any being talked about, but it was an acclaimed game, and I think it did fairly well.
I
Like
guess it's answer.
evolved Zerks
Well, it's just
that maybe aren't susceptible to UV.
I mean, maybe they are, maybe they try to escape at night. I don't know, but or maybe it was just a way to have a cool, different environment in a level in this game. But I think it is an interesting sort of fact.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as if because these particular ones were pretty much hidden underground where they wouldn't be exposed to any of that
Yeah,
light from the city.
right.
So yeah, I mean, they could kind of in theory, I could see a case where they would, stay underground and then continue to evolve, maybe form some kind of Zurks that are not killed by light,
Yeah.
and then, as evolution
Yeah.
goes,
It's interesting because I mean, I have like, so an interesting sort of point that has garnered a lot of discussion online is about like really the very last scene of the game. And while we discussed a lot of the story, we didn't go to that. So we'll discuss it now. So the thing I want to say, I'm going to say now. Anyway, but right as Stray the cat's leaving and there's bright sunlight pouring into the walled off city and a lot of the robots there are celebrating because they finally get to be outside, you see a little flicker of electricity on one of the panels, very similar to the panels that B12 before he was in the B12 drone body had exhibited. And why that's important is because in order to open up the walled off city, B12 essentially sacrifices himself. His robot body dies, and for all you know, at the moment that happens, he dies as well. But that little flicker of the electrical panel is believed by many to be evidence that B12 is actually still alive. And so it's pretty cool because in a way he not only did he help achieve the goal, but he did kind of escape as well, and maybe didn't have to sacrifice himself. But
Yeah, I
anyway,
think
yeah,
there's a lot of credibility to that theory. Because even like, when he's making the final, or what exactly is he doing? I guess he's like hacking into the system.
yeah, yeah. He's sort of hacking, like Stray's doing stuff like he's breaking all of like the electrical connections or something that's helping over. I think you
Yeah,
have to like
yeah,
overload the system, kind of a thing.
yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I think he even says something along the lines as like he's like entering the system or something like
Yeah,
that. Which that's a commonly used phrase for like hacking.
yeah, yeah.
But in a interpret that you can interpret that a different way where he's like actually like putting a part of himself into
Right.
the system.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm on in that camp that he was alive in or you know his
Essence.
essence is alive in the system by the end of the game.
Yeah. And there's a lot of
So
yeah. Go ahead.
no, yeah, so then potentially on a sequel, if and when, a sequel's ever made, we're just hypothesizing, but you'll probably learn more about the human form of B12, maybe. That's the
That would be
direction they
cool.
could go. Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be cool, but it also would it cheapen the original game? And kind of, I almost feel like, we kind of came to terms with, you know, he did what he could do, and then he kind of, he wasn't gonna remember everything or save humankind,
Well,
and
yeah. That's sort of the thing. He kind of comes to the realization that it's
right.
okay that humans may cease to exist. As far as you know, he's the last one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true, true.
So he wanted to survive because of that, but then he sort of like helping Stray was enough, and opening the city was enough,
yeah. I
and
mean, he kind of comes to terms with the fact that the companions are carrying on the human legacy, and that
mhm.
there doesn't need to be an actual human around because of how these robots have evolved.
So speaking of no human around, we talked a lot about how in the slum areas there's robots doing human things, and in the midtown area, and there's this other portion called Ant Village that we didn't really touch on, but it almost seems more like an off the grid type of living situation, the Ant Village place. So, there's that, and they're all kind of doing human things, and whether dancing at clubs or drinking at a bar, cooking food, or picking flowers, or playing music, whatever it is. But then you get to this top area, this control room area, which probably represents like sort of the elite members of society, where they would be staying, and all you really have are a couple of robots doing window washing and janitorial work and things like that. And when you talk to them, you don't have these robust conversations that you had with the members of all the other living areas. They're kind of just very monotone, one, couple of word answers to everything. So it kind of like begs the question, it's, you know, were there humans ever there in that control area? Um, if not, who was really keeping everyone inside? A theory that I had was that maybe humans or a certain group of humans are this, maybe they really are the true antagonists of this game and have walled off walled off these cities and just sort of left the robots there to die, for their own benefit or for their own survival or whatever else. um it's just sort of interesting.
Yeah, I think that it's weird because there is at one point in the game B12 mentions that there were like these elite, like I guess the rich people who were up in that area, but he was like, even all their money and all their you know
Benefit.
non-slum-like living couldn't
Mhm.
save them from the plague.
Right. Yeah,
So
I guess that's
yeah,
that's one theory that could have been something they were trying to say in the game, that like maybe they were the first to go because the robots didn't evolve from them or had the ability to evolve
yeah,
from them.
I think that's a solid theory because like I mentioned earlier, there was a different B12 memory where he mentions how the companion robots began to mimic their human counterparts, and that's how they started to take on these new personalities and stuff.
Maybe it's just the humans in that part, you know, control center or whatever we're calling it. Maybe they just weren't as friendly or nurturing towards the robots. Maybe it wasn't a matter of longevity that they perished first before the other humans, but maybe they just weren't as,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, they treated
have
them
had
just
had
like workers.
yeah, and didn't have as
Right.
close a relationship. So the robots didn't have the opportunity to sort of um mimic their behaviors.
Yeah. I don't know. If I could just theorize that, or just like set the story for a possible sequel, could be that, again, it's maybe this elite group is what caused these issues, and now they're trying to, either hide it or keep it contained, and that's why they're the ones who did this, and then they just sort of abandoned. Whereas the other people in the society, they kind of let stay there with the robots, and they had to continue living and trying to survive in this walled off city. Um, and maybe we'll find out in the future that they're the ones who a caused this, and that there's some retribution.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like, speaking of the world of walled off city, one of my criticisms, if I had one, would be that it is sort of small. I would think a walled off city would probably be a little bit larger in geographical area if this were to actually happen. Um, so it's on the other hand, though, as we said, maybe they just didn't want it to be too big. I mean, I think part of it was probably circumstance that it wasn't a big development team, so they really couldn't have a huge budget
Yeah,
and huge open world.
I think that I don't know. I think that fit for the game though, especially playing as a cat, which is a small
Yeah,
creature.
yeah, no, it's true, and
It made it feel bigger, given that you
yeah,
were playing as a small character.
yeah, and traversing upwards, not necessarily a big width, but a large high height. Um, and again, that also kept the game to be in that 4 or 5 hour range, which I think that's pretty much a standard playthrough. It's about 4 or 5 hours, and that's
Yeah, I
keep
thought I would have a problem with that when I first heard about it, because the game was, like I mentioned, the game was out for several months before I actually played it, so I knew going in that it was going to be short. But I don't know. I think it felt right, the amount of time. I certainly enjoyed the game, and I did feel like they give you enough to do extra that it's worth either really taking your time on your first playthrough or going back and playing it a second time. just things like, collecting all the memories that, like we mentioned earlier, because they do add like a lot of valuable story context there. And then
Yeah,
also like there's some other just like optional stuff like collecting all the sheet musics to give to the street musician. That's not
yeah,
something you have to do at
yeah.
all. Like you don't have to get any of them, but
Right. It's fun. I did that because you get a trophy for doing all of them, and
oh well.
and
And you
again,
100%
and
it.
again, I
Yeah,
platinum
yeah.
trophied. So, but yeah, no, that was cool. I like that, and he plays these little discordant tunes when you give him different sheet music, but it's cool to see what each different one is. And yeah, I mean, I think the shorter playtime, they're all good points. I mean, it, it's shorter playthrough, but with these extra memories and collectibles, it was cool because it did give the game replay value, giving you more just general value for it. Shorter games aren't necessarily bad. I mean, it helps people with busier schedules and things to do and work and family to be able to play a game with what I believe is a really good story, and you still have a really robust story um, to it. So
Yeah, and it's a fun game too. Let's not poo-poo that. But also, I think a shorter game is innately more replayable
yeah,
because like, you can like this game, you could knock it out in like 2 days. So um, I don't know. I feel like this is a game that I'm going to be replaying every, I don't know, like
So often.
every so
yeah,
often, maybe once a year or something, just because it's very accessible.
yeah. All right,
Yeah.
let's do our mid-episode filler segment, and then we'll come back and give some more thoughts. All right, everyone. So last week we had our first brodown episode where we talked about DK64, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and Banjo Kazooie. You heard our thoughts on the game and which one came out on top, but we asked the listeners what their order would be for these games. And contrary to what we said, DK64 actually came in last, despite winning for us. Banjo obviously had a good showing, and we'd just like to share that Banjo got more votes than Donkey Kong. So, shows how much we know. For this week's mid-episode filler question, we've been discussing the world of Stray. So now we'd like to ask the listeners, would you rather A, have a Zurks infestation in your house, B, live in a city with no sunshine, or C, have your consciousness transferred into a robot body? Let us know your answers. We'll read them out next episode. You could drop us a line on any of our social media or anywhere where you get the podcast, along with our website at brothersandbossbattles.com. Our Instagram and X handles are Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS at Boss Battles. And hoping to have a lively discussion. So hit us up, and now back to the regular show. All right, welcome back to the episode. Before we broke, we were just talking about a little bit of the short gameplay time, about 4 to 5 hours. And some people would say it's a negative thing. Others will say it's a positive thing. I mean, I don't think a long or short runtime makes a good or bad game, but I do like the fact that some games are shorter than others because it allows for, a bigger audience to play. That might have otherwise busier lives and, you know, not able to fulfill the 100-hour Witcher 3 requirements to get the full playthrough of a game. So, I think it's overall a positive.
Kind of like books. Sometimes I want to read War and Peace. Sometimes I want to read a short story.
um, Anyway, since this is in the puzzler category, we did touch on a number of puzzles, but let's talk about a few more, a few we liked, a few we didn't like. Um, you know, anyone want to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mentioned one of my big criticisms that it was too linear. My second biggest criticism is that and again, we're classifying this as a puzzler. Oh, I just felt a lot of the puzzles were kind of lazy and stale. Like so, like how many times was
Shallow
there's
and pedantic.
yes, I find your meat both lazy and stale. Um, but anyway, how many times was there a situation where you had to walk or so to speak in an empty metal barrel to roll it along so you could like jump on it and leverage yourself above a fence or onto a higher platform? I mean, it must happen like 5 or 6 times throughout the game. And there's also probably at least 3 instances where you had to pick up like a pail or a bucket and like throw it into a fan, or was that like once or twice? And then there was another instance where you
Well,
had to do something else to stop a fan, like to stop the impellers moving
yeah,
so
but
you could
those are
get
different
through.
things. Like one you drop the bucket, one you pull the battery out.
Yeah, that's right. You had to pull the battery
Yeah.
out of one of them. Yeah. Um,
I don't know. That
maybe
didn't
there was
bother me
maybe there
too
was
much.
two with the bucket. I'm not remembering, but anyway,
Yeah.
even still, it's like you're right. They are different. So I'm not.
Yeah, but
I
those
don't know.
aren't the
It was
only
just
puzzles. We
no, but
touched on a number before.
those two happen throughout the game. Where it's like, oh, another fan I have to get through. Like
Wonder what I have to
little.
do.
It's one that actually took me a little bit of time. There was it's when you're in the Nico Corp and you're stealing the battery. And so it's like there are like these three platforms that you need to weigh down so that three different segments that are containing the battery are removed so that you can freely grab it. And so it's one of them involving those they're like these
But
little cabinets that kind of follow you.
Yeah, were those
yeah,
like Xerox machines, almost copy machines, or no?
they look like them, but like yeah, you had to like
Like
press
printers,
something
giant
on them,
printers.
and then they would like glide to wherever you wanted them to glide
Yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah. I thought it was like a filing cabinet, but I mean that's what it looked like to me.
Like a
But anyway,
futuristic one.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it took me actually took me a little while to realize that I had to like move that over to the fence, and then you had to hop on it, then jump over the fence, and then there was a second one of those filing
Hmm.
cabinets in there, and then you had to bring that out. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I mean to your point, a lot of the puzzles were like kind of well, it was kind of broken into two types. I feel like there was a lot of the traversal puzzles, like you mentioned, where you're just kind of like uh clearing a path basically by dropping a
Yeah,
paint
right,
can
right.
into something. Um, but then there were also some other ones, like one that I remember that I liked was when you're in Seamus's house and you need to so basically you scratch at these paintings to reveal a keypad, and then Seamus is like, oh, I don't know what the code is, and like they don't really tell you, but then there's like a clue on the wall that says this is
Time will
something
tell, I think.
yeah, yeah, something like that.
Mm,
And then there are like four clocks on the
right.
wall. So you need to look at those to get the combination. Basically, it was
Yeah.
either the hour hand, I think it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
thank.
cool. Actually, to interrupt you, I didn't get that at first, and so like I was kind of like sniffing around Seamus's flat, and I actually encountered a glitch there where I was basically like clicking around by the door, and so if you remember, I think you enter through like Momo moves a board, and then you enter through like this. I don't know.
It's like a little hole in the
Yeah, a little hole, right?
wall,
Not through the
the
main
door.
door. Then I was like clicking around the door, and the game basically threw me back outside. Then I couldn't get back in,
Mm,
and then I like restarted, but then I lost all my inventory, everything in my inventory, or at least all the non-essential things in my inventory. So like I
oh,
had some like sheet music, and
mm,
I think I had the
Yeah,
robe or whatever you get from the elderly woman robot. And so I had to like I think that cost me like 45 minutes where I had to like recollect everything I
oh
had.
wow.
So, but anyway, so that reminded me of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
like,
One of,
yeah, good.
sorry, I just wanted to mention one other puzzle that I didn't quite get, and maybe you guys can shed some light on it. So this is in Midtown when you are returning to Clementine's apartment. I believe it's after you steal the battery. So they're like, the guards are on high patrol.
Mhm.
And so this is like one of the, I guess, stealth puzzles here, but you basically need to get up a bunch of stairs in this apartment complex. And Clementine's apartment is, of course, on the top floor. Um, and there are like a ton of these flying sentry drones that are looking for you. And if they catch you, or if you are seen in their light, they start to shoot at you. And this one, I don't know. This was like the hardest part in the game for me, and it ends up being one of my least favorite parts of the game.
Of course, because it was the one hard part in the game.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess that sounds lame, but
It was tough, but
I just feel like it was hard because I just didn't understand it. Like I felt like no matter what I did, I could never get up there without being seen. Maybe I should have just looked on YouTube for like someone doing it the proper way, but
you got it eventually. I think you ultimately enter through like a little hole in the wall again, like not or like a little
yeah.
window.
It's just the path the path seemed very uncertain on how to get to that spot
Yeah.
without
I mean,
drawing
yes,
any
it
without drawing
it
any
wasn't just walking
attention.
upstairs. It was meant to be
Yeah, I don't
something you
know.
had to figure
It
out.
just I
It was a hard part though. I
Yeah.
agree.
I ended up just kind of like brute forcing it and just running as fast as I can, and then like
Yeah.
hopping in a cardboard box and stuff like that.
I like the puzzle where again, I think it was in Midtown where you have to get the cassette tape from like those robots that were just listening to music. I think you eventually use that cassette tape to like, play really loud music in one of the shops to
Yeah.
distract the shopkeep to then
To
steal
steal the vest,
the
the
vest for
worker vest.
the disguise. Um, but like for that, in order to give you the cassette, those robots require you to take down the surveillance cameras that are in that area. So how you get to them, and so you basically just do that by jumping on them, and then they fall apart. But figuring out how to get to the place where you can jump on each of the three of them is sort of the puzzle there. So I kind of like that one. I thought that was
Yeah, I don't know. I guess puzzles that I liked aren't coming to mind right now. Surprise, surprise. But
Because
uh,
they didn't make you do any math equations.
yeah, maybe. But I don't know. The puzzles. I mean, look, you prefaced this at the beginning of the episode. This wasn't 100% puzzler. There's like
yeah. Well,
a
that's because
lot of
there's
other
other
elements.
gameplay elements in it,
Yeah.
that we've been discussing. Yeah. So well, there anything else you guys want to touch upon before we give some final thoughts?
I think no. I think good. Good for final thoughts.
Yeah, me too.
All
Who
right,
wants to go first?
I
Pete,
guess
why
I'll
don't you
start
go?
off.
Oh, Tom,
Uh,
yeah, you go.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, if you've listened to the last several minutes of podcast goodness, I really like this game a lot. It's just, I don't know, you really feel good playing this game, in my opinion. It's got so much going on for it, between the world and just even something that we didn't even really touch on is just like the emotional aspect of it. How they created this kind of world and these characters that you really feel for and care about, even in such a short amount of gameplay time. So just, hats off to the dev team for that. And yeah, I mean, this is just a game that I'm gonna be going back to a lot.
So is it safe to say you recommend it?
100%.
That's
Yeah.
the percentage that Anthony completed the game.
In case anyone forgot, uh,
You're in the presence of gaming excellence.
yeah, it's such a hard game to platinum. That's for sure. So I'll go next. Yeah, I'll echo Tom. I really liked it. I really like the story. I really like the lore. The ambiance is great. The music is great and contributes to it. The gameplay's fun. The puzzles are good. Even if it's not a hardcore puzzler game, it has these other elements to buttress it. Like the stealth elements and the running away elements and the platforming elements. and all of that really added to it. But I in preparation of the podcast, I reviewed a playthrough of this game on YouTube, and I just I just enjoyed watching it so much. And that might be a testament to how good the story and the lore are, maybe even more so than the gameplay and the puzzles, because I just enjoyed watching it as if it was a movie or a series or something like that. I think it's very accessible. I would recommend people play it because it is a short game that allows you to still have a robust story that if you want you can go look up theories online and come up with your own and have a lot of fun with that. So definitely liked it and would definitely recommend it. Whether you get it for free, whether you have to pay the $30 for it, go play it. It's fun. Pete?
It's a small price to pay there.
Okay. So, despite a lot of my comments, I mean, I did enjoy the game. And at the beginning of the episode, I think I called it a solid game, which is the word I want to use again here. Now, I don't mean to discount the merits of the game by using this word, but the novelty of playing as a cat was also a lot of fun to me. As far as some of the downsides of the game, I mentioned I found the puzzles lazy and stale. The game to me didn't really do anything well. Like, the platforming wasn't, again, it was just kind of looking at a platform and pressing A. There wasn't a lot of combat. There was some stealth, which was fun. There's a lot of things that they did okay, I thought. So as far as a recommend or not, I mean, we're mentioning a lot that it's a short game. So the opportunity cost of playing this game, over another game is not really there. So that's something in favor for the game. But the price point, I think it's maybe $30. Is it worth basically 5 hours of pretty good fun? Not great fun, but pretty good fun. I don't think it is. If you could get the game for $10 or for free somewhere, then I would recommend it at that point.
All right, thanks guys. That'll wrap it up for this episode of Brothers in Boss Battles Video Game Showdown. Check out our next episode where we'll discuss our second game of the Adventure Puzzler category, all working towards that brodown episode where the 3 Adventure Puzzler category games will go up against each other and we'll pick a winner. All right, take care everyone. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Check us out on Instagram and X at Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS Boss Battles. And check out our website at brothersandbossbattles.com. Listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts.